I'm trying to get in and I can't get in. I'm here.
Councillor Payne, we can hear you. It's just
Okay.
your video that's not on.
Okay, I can't seem to get in there.
Pushed the wrong button again.
Can you see us?
I didn't do anything different.
Can you see us?
Yeah, I can see everybody. I just can't see the agenda.
Okay. Is there somebody who could ask IT if they could reach out to Councillor Payne and help her with her connectivity issues? And welcome everybody who's joining us on the live stream this evening. We appreciate you being with us. Welcome to your virtual council chambers. And earlier this evening, we did open the meeting and dealt with some closed session items and then recessed just a short time ago. And now we're back to deal with the public planning portion of our meeting. We have 2 public planning meetings tonight. And we also have a one item regarding a boathouse that requires a decision. We also made a couple of changes to the agenda, and I would like to advise that we have rescheduled item 4.8 regarding the mobility orbit, the draft ministerial zoning order, and the next steps. And that won't be on the agenda tonight. So if that's why you're watching, I'm sorry, but please stay tuned. It will be coming back to us on October the 14th. And that agenda will be available on our website if you would like to peruse that ahead of time. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just not quite sure we're live streaming at this point. I don't see anything on my screen at this. Still just blank.
Okay, Councillor Ross. Councillor Ross. Mr. Ross. We'll just give IT a moment to see if they can't repair that. And where are we with Councillor Payne? Has she found her? Oh, she's found herself up. Okay. Welcome, Councillor Payne. Councillor Nicol?
Do you see me? I can't see anything. All I see is Councillor Van Berkel.
So perhaps you're not on speaker view or gallery view. So on the top right-hand corner of your screen, it should say gallery view.
View full screen. Oh, there we go. Gotcha.
There we are. Great. Okay, so are we live streaming yet? It says we're live on YouTube. We are. Okay, great. All right, sorry for that, everybody. Welcome. Love this virtual world. And we welcome you to your council meeting on special council meeting on October the 7th. So I was just explaining that we did just come back from a short recess where we dealt with some closed session items, and now we're going to be dealing with 2 public planning meetings tonight, along with a community planning permit for a boathouse. But we would like to advise anyone who is watching specifically for the Mobility Orbit draft ministerial zoning order and next steps, that will not be on tonight's agenda, and we've moved that to the agenda on October the 14th. And that full agenda should be up on our website, if not tonight, by tomorrow. So I will start the meeting asking if there's any pecuniary interest on tonight's agenda. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I provided the clerk's office a statement of disclosure with regards to item 4.6, the various addresses that the Pratt presentation will talk about. My son has one, he owns one of those. My son and daughter-in-law owns one of those addresses, so I will be stepping aside when that item comes up.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Now, if we were in our council chambers, what would normally happen is the councillor would simply push away from the desk and wouldn't comment on any of the items. In our virtual world, we've agreed that the appropriate process would be for Councillor Ices to turn his video off and not participate in that portion of the meeting. So is there any other pecuniary conflicts this evening? Seeing none. Now we'll get started, and I would like to advise that the meeting will both be audio and video recorded, live streamed, and shall form part of the record, which will be retained according to the town's retention bylaw. And if you'd like more information about that bylaw, please contact the clerk's office. And for any of you speaking tonight, thank you all very much for muting yourselves and putting your video off. Tonight, we will have 3 items on the agenda, 2 that are for public information and public consultation, and then 1 was the item where council will be making a decision. For the first 2 items, we'll hear from town staff and then the applicant. And after they've spoken, council may have a few questions or provide comment. Then we will have the public consultation where members of the public who have registered or pre-registered will be identified on the speakers list. And when it's your turn, I'll ask you to please turn on your video and your audio, and you'll have 5 minutes to express your concerns and comments or ask questions. Then town council will respond where possible. If staff cannot respond to any of your questions this evening, you can be assured that when the staff report comes back to council for council to debate the issue, those questions will be addressed in that staff report. Should anyone need to speak for a second time to identify an issue that had not already been raised or to receive clarification, they may be provided an additional 5 minutes. Should any member of the public who's watching on live stream tonight wish to make comments during the meeting, they can email or call the clerk's services, where the deputy clerk will be monitoring for input and will provide your comments to council and town staff during the meeting. And you can see right on your screen there the email address. You can also, I should let you know that any comments received will become part of the public record. And if you do not submit comments during the meeting, you can still send them in and they will be provided to council and town staff. And you will also be added to the circulation list as an interested party where you will be kept updated on any future information regarding this item. The email and the phone number will be listed on the PowerPoint during the meeting and is also available on tonight's agenda that can be found on the website. So please feel free to either email or call the deputy clerk with your questions or comments, and they will be circulated to us. We'll now hear from the town clerk, Mr. Parkin, on how the public notice of this meeting regarding the first item was provided. Mr. Park. We can't hear you, Mr. Parkin. You're not muted, but we have no sound. Try again. It looked like it worked there for a minute and then.
How about now? Anything? Okay.
Okay.
Troubleshooting on the fly. Okay. Your worship, with respect to the first item regarding staff report DSR 151-20, that's 299 Sunnybrae Avenue, the Innisfil Executive Estates Phase 2, Plan of Subdivision and Zoning Bylaw Amendment. The notice for this public meeting was provided to the required agencies and all landowners within 120 meters of the subject lands on September 17th, 2020. And signs were also posted on the property in accordance with the Ontario regulations. Notice was also provided in the newspaper and on the town's website. Information on the development, including studies submitted in support of the applications, was also posted on the town's getinvolvedinnisfil.ca website for review and commenting.
Thank you, Mr. Parkin. Has any correspondence been received by the Clerk's Department concerning the proposed amendments?
Yes, we've received 3 pieces of correspondence. The first one from Anita and Dale Galbraith, dated October 6, 2020, requesting clarification on when construction will commence and how long it will take. Current subdivision is still under construction. The second item is from the Simcoe County District School Board, dated October 7th, 2020, stating no objections to the application, but requesting that the board's standard conditions be included. And the third item from the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, dated October 7th, 2020, providing the LSRCA's conditions of draft plan approval. And in addition, Your Worship, we've received at least 5 comments on the town's Get Involved Innisfil page with questions and comments about the application. And as you mentioned before, members of the public may provide comment or register their interest for this application during the meeting or up until council makes a decision on the application by contacting the clerk's office.
Thank you, Mr. Parkin. We'll now hear from Stephen Montgomery, Senior Planner, who will provide a high-level summary of the planning context of the proposed amendments. And after his presentation, we will hear from Vanessa Simpson on behalf of the applicant. So, Mr. Montgomery.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public, the purpose of this public meeting is to consider a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment application for the subject lands located at 299 Sunnybrae Avenue in Stroud, known as Innisfil Executive Estates Phase 2. And I will just share my screen. Hopefully that comes up.
It's up. Thank you.
Thank you. So shown on the screen is a 2018 aerial photo showing the subject lands outlined and hatched in black. There are 2 parcels making up the subject lands. The larger parcel to the north, which is block 39, which is zone future development or FD zone, and a smaller portion to the south, which is block 41, which is zone residential 1 exception or R18 zone currently. To the north are existing single attached lots. To the north and east is the Metrolinx railway line. There are agricultural lands as well to the east and single attached lots. To the west are single detached lots fronting onto Sunnybrae Avenue, which comprise what's considered the first phase of this development, Innisfil Executive Estates Phase 1. And to the south is an existing town-owned stormwater pond and existing single attached dwellings fronted onto Victoria Street. There's also an existing public walkway that connects this area to Sunnybrae Avenue and Robertson Avenue, which currently serves partly as a driveway access to 2 houses, has a portion that was deeded to the town in 2006 and also a portion that was dedicated as a public highway in 1950. So this 20-meter right-of-way here is owned by the town of Innisfil. So again, the purpose of this application is to permit a 21-lot single detached freehold subdivision on the subject lands with a public road serviced by municipal water and private septic systems. In order to facilitate the development of the subdivision, the applicant is also proposing to rezone the lands from the current future development or FD zone to a zone which is called residential 1 exception hold or R1XH zone. The details of the subdivision and zoning will primarily be provided in the applicant's presentation. However, on the screen is the proposed subdivision, which shows an extension of Robertson Avenue into a cul-de-sac, 21 single detached lots, berming and fencing along the Metrolinx corridor, including a proposed requested 12-meter widening of the corridor by Metrolinx. This development is considered the second phase, as mentioned, of the Innisfil Executive Estates development. The first phase over here is the 38 lots on Sunnybrae Avenue, which was originally draft approved back in 1989, and then redline revised in subsequent years and finally registered in 2015. The town's required to review several planning policy documents for all planning applications, including the Town of Innisfil's Community Strategic Plan, Provincial Policy Statement, the Growth Plan, the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, the County of Simcoe official plan, and the Town of Innisfil official plan, as well as the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw. The staff report this evening provides a basic overview of these policy documents. Staff of the town are still reviewing the proposal in light of all these documents, and this would inform any future recommendation to council in a future staff report. And just to reiterate what was already stated, there's no decision made on this development this evening, but rather a staff report recommendation to council would be written at a later date for future council decision, taking into consideration all the comments received on this application, as well as staff's full review. In terms of comments received, the agency comments so far are Hydro 1 stating no concerns or comments, Canada Post stating no objections, location of community mailboxes will be determined at the detailed design stage or at the time of composite utility plan or CUP. In Services has provided technical comments on the water servicing aspect, and Simcoe County District School Board has no objections and gives their standard conditions. Also, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority has provided a list of requested draft plan conditions for inclusion in any future draft plan approval. GetInvolved.ca has several public comments, for example, requesting that there be no construction access provided through Sunnybray Avenue for this development, that the grading deposits on phase 1 be returned to the owners, and that consideration be had for options for train whistle cessation at Victoria Street crossing to reduce the train noise for the area. There's a request that there's some mature trees on the property be preserved in the vicinity of proposed lot 18, and that all the homes fronting on Sunnybray, including the one lot in this phase that fronts onto Sunnybray, which is lot 19, be built prior to the rest of the lots in this subdivision to reduce construction debris and disturbance on Sunnybray, as construction has been ongoing for a long time on that street. Also, there's concerns about the pace of construction of the new subdivision in terms of the proposed construction duration. And of course, concerns about construction noise, debris, dust, frequency of town inspection, bylaw enforcement during construction, and confirmation of construction fencing, and also a question whether the proposed berm is for noise abatement. And with respect to the berm, I can confirm that one of the reasons for the berm is noise reduction, as well as the proposed acoustical fencing. With respect to further matters for consideration, as highlighted in the staff report, there are official plan policies related to affordable housing. For example, there's a policy that requires 25% of all new ground-related housing for applications with 10 or more units to be constructed to accommodate future accessory second dwelling units through such matters as the provision of sufficient window sizes, plumbing, roof ends, and fire sound separation. And staff are reviewing this with the developer in terms of future house designs. As well, the interface between the rail line and the development is being reviewed, in particular with respect to access to fencing and the rail berm for maintenance purposes, and in terms of ownership. All of the proposed acoustical fencing for the development is shown on private lots, and a portion of the berm is proposed to be conveyed to the town of Innisfil, but portions would also be on the private lots. So again, staff are still reviewing this design in terms of maintenance and access. We're also looking at Parkland dedication. Cash in lieu of parkland was provided for the previous phase 1 through a land assessment process for the 38 lots on Sunnybray, which was used to provide upgrades to the local Stroud parks. The closest park is 600 to 900 meters away, and this is the Meadows of Stroud Park. And staff are reviewing whether parkland should be provided in the subdivision or if cash in lieu should be provided for existing Stroud parks. If parkland was provided, it would be under the Planning Act 5% of the developable area, which would be a small park at about 0.23 to 0.24 hectares. The draft plan conditions would also be required to be approved by council related to such matters as urban design and architectural control, allocation for water servicing, fencing, landscaping, matters related to tree preservation and tree preservation plans, phasing, updates to the existing technical reports, agency conditions, and other standard requirements for a subdivision. So in terms of next steps, staff will review and consider all comments received on this application and report back to council at a future council meeting, recommending whether this proposed subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment should be approved and the proposed conditions for approval. Notice would be provided respecting when this report is returning to council for consideration to all those who requested notification and or submitted written correspondence for this public meeting. And that includes the written correspondence received on the Get Involved Innisfil website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Now we'll hear on behalf of the applicant, Ms. Vanessa Simpson. Ms. Simpson, whenever you're ready.
Hi, good evening. Am I going to be given access to share my screen? Okay, I can start my video. I see that pop up. Okay, let's just pull this up here.
Yes, we can see your screen, Ms. Simpson.
Okay, it should just be going. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Good evening, council, town staff, and members of the public. Let me know if I'm too quiet. I've been told that it's quiet on these headphones. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. I'll try and talk louder. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to attend this public meeting tonight. As mentioned, my name is Vanessa Simpson from Innovative Planning Solutions, planner on the project representing the applicant for the proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications for lands legally described as Block 39 and 41 of the registered plan 51M-1045 in the settlement area of Stroud. So as mentioned, the property is located within Stroud, which is identified as a village settlement in the town official plan. The settlement boundary can be seen here on this plan, outlined in the black line. The subject lands are identified in the red, 2 parcels as noted, and are located in the northeast quadrant of the settlement area and are bound by the Metrolinx rail corridor to the east and existing residential development on either side. The area highlighted in blue, this area and the stormwater pond, was included or is identified as phase 1 of Innisfil Executive Estates, which included the development of 38 single detached residential lots. Phase 1 was registered in February 2015 and construction is almost complete. The subject lands comprise of the 2 blocks shown in red, which were draft plan approved with the phase 1 lands. And we're now referring to these lands as phase 2 of Innisfil Executive Estates. Within the phase 1 development, a stormwater management pond was created, and it was designed to accommodate all lands within the phase 1 subdivision, as well as all the lands within phase 2. A walkway block is been provided through phase 1 construction, which is just here, and will be maintained through the development of phase 2. The subject lands have a total area of 4.7 hectares with 20 meters of frontage along Sunnybray, which is here, and a combined frontage of 131 meters along Robertson Avenue. The phase 2 property is relatively flat and has been disturbed through construction of phase 1. The lands are currently designated settlement, which is shown, village settlement, which is shown in the yellow over here on the official plan mapping, and village residential, and are designated or zoned over here, future development and R1-8. The R1-8 zone notes that no dwelling shall be erected closer than 30 meters from the southwesterly limit of the rail right-of-way. As seen here, all lands within the phase 1 development have been zoned R1-8. The draft plan of subdivision proposes to create 21 single detached residential lots with proposed density of 5 units per hectare. All lots will front onto a municipal right-of-way, one fronting onto Sunnybray, which is here. This is referred to as Lot 19, and the remaining will front on to Robertson Avenue. Robertson Avenue is currently an unopened road allowance, which is owned by the town, which provides access to currently the single detached dwelling through a laneway type driveway. Robertson Avenue will be extended from Victoria Street, ending in a cul-de-sac, and built to the municipal standard, including a municipal sidewalk within the right-of-way. Municipal water services will be provided to each lot. However, as there's no municipal wastewater services currently within Stroud, there will be private septic system within each lot. A hydrogeological impact assessment has been prepared and submitted with this application to demonstrate the suitability of the subject property to support individual septic systems. There have been extensive pre-consultation discussions with Metrolinx regarding their requirements for a corridor widening, which can be shown here in the hatched kind of line mark. So a 12-meter Metrolinx widening is required for future use. Metrolinx has confirmed that this widening is sufficient to accommodate future plans for this corridor and is intended for passive uses, not expansion of a rail line. So passive uses would be grading, stormwater, and just kind of maintenance and servicing of the rail corridor. A berm, which can be seen in green here and extends onto lot 6 and lot 7, is also required, which provides both safety and noise benefits to the site and are required by Metrolinx. It does abut Robertson Avenue, and as Stephen mentioned, it would be transferred to the town, this piece. The remaining portion of the berm, both north and south, would be within the private lots. A rail noise impact study and ground vibration monitoring memo have been submitted along with the application in support of this development. The draft plan has been designed in such a way to accommodate the Metrolinx widening, the berms that are required, and the setback to the rail corridor. Robertson Avenue Road extension has been positioned in such a way to align with the existing tracks. So you'll see it kind of snakes upward to align with the Metrolinx Railway and almost creates what we tend to call a window street along, or a window road along the rail line. This Robertson Avenue has been positioned in this way to provide the access required to the rail corridor, as well as additional separation between the rail line and the majority of the lots and dwellings proposed. The zoning bylaw amendment will permit the residential lots and rezone the lands from future development to residential 1 with special provision. The zoning bylaw amendment currently only is applicable to the lands that are hatched here. This block, the more south block, is already zoned R1-8 and the lots do conform to the R1 zone. So rezoning those lands is just not permitted or not required at this time. So like I said, they'll apply to this large block to the north. The R1 minimum required lot frontage is 17 meters. And due to the Metrolinx design requirements, the irregular shape of the site, and in order to facilitate the most efficient use of the lands, several of the lots have less than 17-meter frontage, with the smallest frontage being 14.2 meters. Therefore, a site-specific special provision related to reduced lot frontage is requested. The front, rear, then side yard setbacks, as well as lot coverage and landscape open space and the other provisions outlined in the zoning bylaw will remain unchanged. However, the dwelling built form will be specially designed to fit within each of the lots. In addition, a minimum permitted setback from a principal main rail line right of way to a residential dwelling is 30 meters. As noted, given the passive nature of the Metrolinx use proposed within this section of the rail corridor, the 30-meter setback will continue to apply, but can be measured from the existing Metrolinx right-of-way, so the existing boundary which is present today. Therefore, 2 site-specific special provisions are proposed. No dwelling shall be erected any closer. No dwelling shall be erected closer than 30 meters from the existing limit of the rail right-of-way as of June 2020, and a reduced minimum lot frontage of 14 meters shall be permitted. In addition, town staff have recommended that a holding H symbol be applied to the lands through the zoning bylaw amendment application. The holding symbol will note no building permits can be issued until water allocation is granted and a subdivision agreement is entered into with the town. At this time, the applicant doesn't have any concerns regarding the holding provision proposed. The variances are considered minor and contribute to the intensification of the development, to the intensification and development capacity of these lands. The provisions requested are characteristic of the neighborhood within Stroud. Residential lots within Stroud range in size, area, and shape. This is common in settlement areas that have grown over time. All proposed lots will have sufficient area to accommodate the built form dwellings and services which are required for each of the lots. So we have a long list here of studies that have been prepared in support of this application, and they're all available for review. The planning justification report has been submitted, which analyzes the development proposal based on applicable planning policy, including the PPS, growth plan, county plan, town official plan, and town zoning bylaw. The planning report, along with all these reports and drawings submitted, are currently being reviewed by the town staff for conformity with policy and to town standards. These reports are available for review if requested. Okay, in conclusion, the draft plan of subdivision is comprised of 21 single detached residential lots with a cul-de-sac which connects to Victoria Street via the extension of Robertson Avenue. The development will be serviced by individual on-site sewage services and utilize municipal water. A consolidated stormwater management block provided through phase 1 development is designed to include the lands within phase 2. The concurrent site-specific zoning bylaw amendment application will facilitate development of the 21 lots with special provision for reduction in lot frontage and the setback to the existing Metrolinx rail corridor. The proposed development will utilize the land in an efficient manner and be compatible with the uses in the immediate vicinity. The proposed subdivision will provide additional housing, population, and complete the development within the settlement boundary in this quadrant of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Now I go to council and ask if there's any questions or comments from council. Councillor Fowler.
We're taking in a lot of information with regards to Robertson Avenue. The one question I have is, with the cul-de-sac, has it been looked at for emergency vehicles? Because if you're going to have vehicles parking on both sides of the street, and you have that sharp right turn as it comes in right off the road, has that been looked at for access and whatnot?
Mr. Montgomery.
Through your worship, yes, that has been circulated to fire and emergency staff. Obviously, there's radius and engineering standards requirements that are needed to be met, including the curve of the street and the radius of the cul-de-sac.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Fowler? No. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. A couple questions. I'm wondering if the applicant can address lot 19. It looks fairly obvious from the picture that lot hadn't been sold possibly to be used as an entrance for construction there. And I know that would be very upsetting to the residents in phase 1. So I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
Ms. Simpson.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Isis. One of the reasons that piece, that lot had to remain with those lands is if that piece would have been developed with the phase 1, the block that we see today would have no frontage on a public road. So it would essentially be landlocked and not have frontage. I believe that's why it was probably retained at that time.
Follow up.
Mm-hmm.
So in the planning of construction, if this is approved and Robertson is allowed to be an entrance, will that be the only entrance into the construction zone to alleviate some of the concerns of the residents in phase 1?
Yes, through your worship. That's definitely something we can explore with the applicant. That was a comment that we received today, so we haven't had the opportunity to, fully discuss it, but that's definitely something that the team can review. I'm sure that they don't have any concerns regarding that comment.
Thank you.
And just one more comment. I'm just wondering on the timeline for this development. Phase 1, as it is noted, has been 5 years and it's still not totally completed. Again, the residents, it's very unsettling to have construction in your neighborhood for year after year after year. So is there a timeline on perhaps when this would all be completed?
Your worship, I don't know if the owner's applicant developer has a timeline outlined today. It's not something that I'm aware of at this point. At this point, we're trying to work through the approvals, which we know is going to take some time, obviously. But that's something I can definitely circle back with the owners and have that conversation and see if we can provide you some more information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isis. Councillor Seti.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 areas of questions, so which will probably be answered, I presume, by Mr. Montgomery, but I'll leave it open. The first one is the opening of the road, which the town owns the property for Robertson Road, that in the report shows that it is currently being used by 2 homes on Victoria Street as a shared driveway. However, looking on Google Earth, because I didn't have time to go there and look at the houses, by driving by, they currently have their own driveways. And I just wonder the width of that to change that road out between those 2 homes. Would this then be the visibility coming onto Victoria Street? And then also, would this have some fencing treed for privacy? I presume those 2 homeowners would have to put up their own fencing in privacy for that street. So that's my first area question. And then I have a follow-up question on the berm.
Mr. Montgomery.
Through you, Your Worship, the question of the detailed design of that street, the detailed design would mostly occur after draft plan approval if this was approved. Obviously, staff would have to consider daylighting triangles or if that's not possible, other safety considerations for traffic sightlines and fencing. But those details would come out basically after draft plan approval. We could also, in the staff report that's returning to council, recommendation report, include some conditions about that and some further consideration about that interface, because basically it would be an urban cross-section road with curb and gutter, 8.5 meter asphalt is what's proposed, which means a portion of it would be boulevard on either side. But those considerations we'll certainly have a look at and report back.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Seti.
Thank you very much. The second follow-up well, more comments is on the berm, because I noticed it was hard for me to figure it out. So I was happy to see the drawing with the berm in the green that's showing a wider range. Just to wonder if staff could have some discussions with operations and maybe the development, because I've found that with my experience of a berm, it goes in sodded, residents love it, and it's maintained by the developer until it's transferred to the town. Then the difficulty is that now operations has to have equipment to go on a steep incline to try and cut this. And it's, well, you know, it's costly and more dangerous. So I'm wondering if maybe discussions of, since if there's going to be trees on that, that you actually look at some ornamental grasses that, are planted instead of the sod, because they then are attractive to the homeowners who aren't going to complain now with a change in their view. They don't require the maintenance, so we don't have operation costs, and you have residents that are happier in seeing that, and it's more of a attractive, naturalized area.
Mr. Montgomery? Or Ms.
Your worship,
Simpson,
Councillor Orsatti. Certainly we can look at that in terms of reducing the maintenance cost. Engineering and planning are reviewing with the applicant the detailed design as well for that berm and the relationship to the acoustical fencing and maintenance access and the slope for any maintenance vehicles that are required along there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol.
Your worship, obviously we're just receiving this tonight, so I don't need the answers tonight, but just curious, I thought as a town we tried to discourage cul-de-sacs. I also wondered in the diagram there how the stormwater retention pond is also marked as future development, how that could be, how that would change. Just curious about, I see there's a traffic study, but just the impact of 21 additional units exiting just onto Victoria Street. And my last question would be, does the town have, or in services have any concerns about using the town lake-based water system to supply septic systems and not replenish the source? So again, I don't need it tonight, just for the report when it comes back, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any either Ms. Simpson or Mr. Montgomery want to reply, or would just leave that for the staff report?
Through your worship, I can speak to the, well, I can speak to the zoning. The future development zone on the storm block is just a function of historical zoning patterns dating back to the 1980s and 90s. Any town-owned property can have any zone on it because there's a grandfather clause in the zoning bylaw that allows any public uses to go in any zone. Certainly through a housekeeping bylaw, though, I think, in my opinion, we should correct that from FD to perhaps an OS zone to reflect the storm block.
Okay. I just had, sorry, Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Montgomery, I just had a question about the cash in lieu of Parkland. So you mentioned it, the money for Parkland from phase 1 was used in Stroud for some improvements to a nearby park. I'm wondering, it's helpful for me as the ward councillor to know what those improvements were. A lot of times it feels like the cash in lieu of Parkland gets set aside for other things that hopefully are done for the residents in the village. But it's good to know what those are. And then I'm also wondering about if you have any other plans for the cash from phase 2.
I'm going to speak to that first, if I could, Mr. Montgomery, and then I'll pass it off to you, because I do recall this first public meeting acutely, and it was your predecessor. It is never, we've always traditionally done either parks or cash in lieu or through a shared servicing plan, but We've never dedicated it to a certain community. It's always just been gone into the general reserve. So it could be to fix a road end or a lake access or something like that. But Councillor Lahi, when we were going through phase one, wanted something in the resolution that said that that particular Parkland dedication money would be spent in Stroud. And I'm not sure if Mr. Montgomery would be able to give the direction as to what it was used for, but I'm sure if we have anybody on here from, I guess we wouldn't have them on here tonight, but we could get that question addressed to you. We have Mr. Kane, maybe he could respond to that.
Thank you, Worship. Your recollection is the same as mine. There was quite a debate at council about not adhering to the typical process of putting that in a general pot, and that money was set aside. I believe, and we'll confirm for the final recommendation report, but I do believe that money was set aside for Parkworks as recently as last year, just further to the west of the phase one Innisfil Executive Estates land. So I believe those monies have been spent, but we'll check in with capital engineering and include that in the report for council.
Thank you. I have a question, whether it's necessary or not, but can we put in the deed that there is a train track there and that trains do have whistles? I'm not sure if we did that for phase one or not, but definitely for phase two, you would think that when people see a train track, they'd understand that there was going to be noise there, but that's not always the case. And also on lot 18, the topographical lines on that don't make it look very flat. And I just wondered, it's an odd shaped lot to begin with, and then it looks like there's a bit of a hill on that piece. And is that one of the lots that needed the very small frontage? Ms. Simpson?
Your worship. Okay, let me look at lot 18. I have lot 17 and 18, they both meet the lot frontage. My guess is that topo seen there, it might be a stockpile from construction of phase one. We can confirm that for you. But that's kind of what my hunch would be, because it is kind of an anomaly across the site, a little mogul or a mountain there within Stroud. So that's my assumption would be it's probably a stockpile for phase one, but we can look into that for you. And I can also comment on the deeds. The rail noise impact study has a list of recommendations for clauses which should be included on deeds. So that should be highlighted in there to identify that there essentially is train track there and there could be noise in the area.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, then I will. Now we would like to hear from those members of the public who have questions regarding the proposed amendment before council receives the presentations report and all the comments provided during this meeting. So questions or comments are now welcome. The speaker order is now on the screen. So when it's your turn, you'll have 5 minutes to express your questions or concerns, and town staff will be capturing your comments as we progress. Once your 5 minutes are up, please turn off your video and audio, and I will call the next speaker's name. Once all speakers have had a chance, then I will ask for additional speakers, and you can come back for a second time if you so wish. I will call the speaker's name and ask that they turn their audio and their video on when it's their time to do so. Now, during the meeting, once you have provided your comment, you may remain in the meeting, but please do not turn your audio or video back on. You may also leave the meeting and watch it on the town's YouTube or live stream, whichever you wish. So I will now ask the first person, Donna Ron, please turn on your video and state your full name for the record and welcome.
Thanks very much. My name is Donna Ron. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this meeting tonight. Both the information that came from the town as well as information from Vanessa Simpson was extremely helpful. And of the 12 questions that I had listed, I think the majority of them got answered. There's only a few that I think didn't, unless I missed it. So hopefully just tell me if I'm duplicating. I'll just go forward with the questions if I could. When will phase 1 actually be finished before phase 2 starts, or is this going to be sort of done at the same time?
Ms. Simpson?
I'm just jotting down as we speak here. Through your worship. That's a question I'm going to have to come back to. I'll have to discuss with the developer that's completing the phase 1 development right now to see what their timeline is on finalizing everything within there. I would assume that it is, because I know it's getting close. And the process that we're now in with staff to move forward with the ZBA application and draft plan are going to take, you know, some time to complete. So I think within that time frame, the development should be finalized, but we can definitely address that.
Okay, thank you. The second is impact to grading on phase 1 due to phase 2. My husband and I were the very first owners on Sunnybray, and we bought over 7 years ago. We've been in for 5.5 now. Our grading has been good and it's been not good. It's been changed because of things around us as they've changed, where a house is built or things have happened, they've changed grading, etc. So I just want to, and septic systems, etc. That was another piece where ours was in the front. I think one of the only ones. I think there might be a couple others. And then all the others are in the back, which we were told we couldn't have, but that's not for this meeting. So just looking to understand when there is an impact to phase 1's grading, who's going to be responsible for that? How do we get it fixed? We're still trying to get it fixed with just phase 1. My concern is phase 2 is going to cause a lot more challenges.
Through your worship, typically the grading of phase 2 should not impact phase 1 development. And regarding if there's issues, I don't know if maybe Mr. Montgomery can speak to that. If we contact the town, if you'd contact the town and the town takes care of that, I'm not sure about that process.
Mr. Montgomery, I think we might be getting into more construction questions versus planning questions, but do you have any comments?
Through your worship, I don't know if engineering can speak to that. They're here today, but that's more of a construction question dealing with the end state of a subdivision. If not, we can certainly get back personally.
Mayor Dolan, if I may. My name is Dylan Moore, the development project manager for this file. And to answer your question, Donna, Ron, as part of the review process, we'll review phase 2 in terms of the grading to make sure that there's safe conveyance, there's no adverse impacts in terms of stormwater management onto the phase 1 land. That review is still underway, but that's something we'd definitely be looking at.
Thank you for that.
My next question would be is how many builders will be in phase 2? In phase 1, our understanding upon purchase was that there would be 1 builder only. And there was, I believe, at least a minimum of 2, if not 3 to 4 different builders that built in phase 1. So looking to find out if that's the case here, and if there is more than 1 builder, I'm going to use Ant Construction because that was the one we purchased from. If it's more than Ant, who are the other builders? And will the homes look the same and follow all the same standards as the first one that we purchased?
Through your worship. So that's a kind of a 2-part question. The first really does lie back again on kind of more of a construction question. At this time, I'm not sure if the developer would have multiple builders within the development, building the homes. That's something we'll have to circle back on. The second question regarding the architectural style of the dwellings. architectural guidelines were required for the phase 1 development, a similar package would be prepared for phase 2. So if you probably had seen something like that, you know, through the build of your house, it would be quite similar.
Okay. And my last question is, are we able to know who the principals responsible for phase 2 are?
Ms. Simpson? You're on mute.
There we go, through your worship. Okay, sorry, what do you mean by the principals? The owner?
In phase 1, there was developer, Mr. Lou Kelly, and Wayne Ezekiel from Ant Construction. Is that still the case for phase 2, or has that changed?
That is still the case for phase 2 right now.
Yeah, right now, but I guess the point is that it could change.
Yeah, I mean, at any time, things are always for sale. I'm not trying to lead you astray saying they are for sale and they're planning on doing different things. It's my understanding that that's how the development will proceed with the same developer builder.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My questions, appreciate it.
Thank you for being with us and listening tonight. We appreciate that. Next is Anita Galbraith. We'll give Anita a minute there to see if she can.
There we go.
There we are.
Okay.
Welcome.
Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Anita. Oh, there you go.
That okay? All right, my name's Anita Galbraith, and we live at 310 Sunnybray. You've basically addressed all the questions that we've all had. Somehow, I was able to get in and log in for this meeting, but a lot of the people who live on the street who were concerned and wanted to get in couldn't figure out how to register. So I'm here on behalf of a bunch of other people, but you've been asked those questions. We haven't really gotten a full answer. Lot 19 is probably the most important one for all of us. We don't want that to be an access road for their construction. So once you can tell us when Robertson's going to be opened up so that they can go in and out through there. When all of our grading is going to be done for phase 1. We don't have a final pave on the road yet either. And the noise control and the dust and mess, as long as they're not going in through lot 19. That's really our biggest concerns. You've talked about the berm. And really everything has already been addressed by everybody else. So I'm just going to reiterate it for the 20 of us that couldn't get on this site.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, I'll add, if you guys do think of other questions, to provide the questions through the clerk's office, you can email, call, or through the online feature.
So a lot of us have sent general emails or whatever to list our questions. So, but as I said, you've pretty well said all the same thing over and over. So I don't want to waste everyone's time and say the same thing, but we all have the same concerns.
Thank you, Mrs. Galbraith. And for anyone who couldn't get on, if they are live streaming tonight and watching, they have the opportunity to still phone in the clerk or to email the clerk's office. And it doesn't even have to be tonight. You know, if as long as we get those questions or comments into clerk's office and planning within the next few weeks, that'll be the opportunity. They'll have the opportunity to make sure they're addressed. And all of those people will then also get notification of when council will be debating this, when that report comes back that addresses all of what we talked about tonight and has the answers about what we talked about tonight.
Okay, that's great.
So Mr. Montgomery, any sense of when you think this will, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but any sense of when you think this might come back to council?
To you, Your Worship, we'll have to regroup on that. We do have to meet with the developer and discuss the comments received this evening and prepare a report. It'll be, as soon as possible in the context of answering all the questions and getting the comments back from all of the relevant agencies that we need to form the draft plan conditions. I can't give an exact date, but the draft plan conditions will have to be put together, a staff report will have to be put together, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Okay, so did anybody have anything further that they'd like to add? Any of the people that had another question? Ms. Ron or Ms. Galbraith? Seeing none, have any emails been received from the clerk's office during this meeting?
Your Worship, we have not received any emails with regards to this matter.
And have any comments or questions been provided by phone during this meeting?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we have not received any calls regarding this item.
So I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to provide input regarding the proposed amendment. And we will now go to the recommendation, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and then ask council if they have any further questions or comments. So again, we're not making any decisions. This is just to receive the information, a recommendation to receive, and that the comments will be addressed in a comprehensive report coming back to a future council meeting. So may I have a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you. That's Councillor Orsatti and Councillor Waters. All those in favor? Any contrary? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have not made oral or written submission in regards to this proposal before a decision is reached, you should be aware that the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal may dismiss your appeal. Anyone who wishes to provide comment may still do so, and also register as an interested party to be contacted before this application is further considered by council. And please contact the clerk's office at clerksoffice@innisfil.ca. And I want to thank everybody for their participation. And now, because of the Planning Act, we're going to do all the same thing over, the same preamble over for the second item on council tonight. So we will now hear from the town clerk, Mr. Parkin, on how public notice of this meeting regarding the next item was provided.
Thank you, Worship. With respect to this item regarding staff report DSR 152-20, 881 Mapleview Drive, the Innisfil Mapleview Development Limited. And the address is listed there. This is the DG Pratt Construction Limited official plan amendment. Notice for this public meeting was provided for two required agencies on September 17th, 2020, and was posted in the Innisfil Journal in accordance with the Ontario regulations for planning applications. In addition, the notice was provided on the town's Get Involved website.
Has any correspondence been received by the Clerk's Department concerning the proposed amendments?
Yes, Your Worship, we've received one piece of correspondence from the Simcoe County District School Board dated October 7th, 2020, stating no objections to the application, but requesting that the board's standard conditions be included. And Your Worship, no comments were received on the the town's Get Involved Innisfil webpage. And then another reminder for everyone that they may provide comment or register their interest regarding this application during the meeting, or up until council makes a decision on the application by contacting the clerk's office.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parkin. We'll now hear from Mr. Chris Cannon, planner, who will provide a high-level summary of the planning context of the proposed amendment.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public. This evening's public meeting has discussed the town-initiated official plan amendment for the lands located at 881 Mapleview Drive, as well as 1187, 1309, 1321, 1335, 1349, and 1363 ninth line, along with 02351 and 2355 20 Side Road. The town initiated official plan amendment proposes.
Mr. Cannon, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wondered, did you plan on sharing your screen? Or was the clerk's office going to do that?
The clerk's office was going to control the PowerPoint.
Okay, let's just give them a second. There we are. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Cannon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public. This evening's public meeting is to discuss the town-initiated official plan amendment for the lands located at 881 Mapleview Drive and 1187, 1309, 1321, 1335, 1349, and 1363 ninth line, as well as 02351 and 2355 20 Side Road. The town-initiated official plan amendment proposes to redesignate a portion of the subject lands to reflect existing conditions. On January 17, 2018, the town of Innisfil passed bylaw number 007-18 to adopt the town of Innisfil's new Our Place official plan. The town adopted Our Place official plan designated portions of the subject lands as rural area on Schedule B land use. Next slide, please. The lands located at 881 Mapleview Drive are generally located at the corner of Mapleview Drive and 25 Side Road, and will be referred to as the Parcel A lands. They are located north and west of Sandy Cove. The lands are approximately 36 hectares in size. A portion of the lands to be redesignated from agricultural area to rural area are approximately 7 hectares in size. The lands located at 9th Line and 20th Side Road will be referred to as the Parcel B lands. They are located north of the Alcona settlement area. The lands are approximately 147 hectares in size. The portion of the lands to be redesignated from agricultural area to rural area are approximately 95 hectares. Next slide, please. The purpose and effect of the town-initiated official plan amendment is to redesignate portions of the subject land from agricultural area to rural area and maintain the key natural heritage feature and key hydrological function official plan designations. Proposed official plan amendment is generally a housekeeping official plan amendment given the history of the lands. A site walk and historical area imagery analysis of the Mapleview lands, Part A lands, has taken place. In addition, an agricultural assessment was conducted by Ag Plan for the Night Line lands, Part B lands, which resulted in a low soil capability to produce agricultural sustainable crops. The town is not proposing any changes to any other designation focused is on recognizing the rural conditions of the currently agricultural designated lands. Next slide, please. As you can see with this image, the Mapleview lands, Part A lands, consist mainly of environmental lands. Lands in red, the lands that are proposed to be redesignated from agricultural to rural area. These lands were part of a historical aggregate extraction area and cannot sustain significant agricultural production as a result. This does not refine or establish key natural heritage features or key hydrological features strictly as it relates to the agricultural lands on the property from agricultural area to rural area. Next slide, please. As you can see with this image, the 9th line lands, Part B lands, consist of some environmental lands. The lands in red show the lands that are proposed to be redesignated from agricultural area to rural area. These lands were part of the study by Ag Plan that resulted in the lands being designated as such. The agricultural area it's been determined through the Ag Plan that the agricultural area cannot sustain significant agricultural production on those lands. Next slide, please. As set out in the staff report, planning staff have reviewed the lands in the context of the applicable policy framework. To highlight, the redesignation is consistent with the PPS, the provincial policy statement, as the lands are not considered prime agricultural area to be protected for the long-term agricultural use of the land. The proposed amendment conforms to the growth plan as per section 4.2.6.8. The growth plan relies on upper tier official plans in effect as of July 1st, 2017, to be considered the agricultural land base for the purposes of the growth plan. The in effect county official plan applies a combination of rural area and agricultural designation, and the existing conditions support a rural designation in the local official plan. Next slide, please. As a result of the notice in the paper and the agency circulation, comments received the data from, as Mr. Parkin mentioned, the Simcoe County District School Board. They've indicated they have no objection and are looking to continue discussions with town staff regarding identification of lands for future school sites within the town of Innisfil. We have not received any comments on Get Involved website today, and we will consider comments received and heard tonight and report back to council with a recommendation at a future council meeting. Next slide. As mentioned, this is a housekeeping exercise that would redesignate the subject lands from agricultural area to rural area. Balance of the subject lands will retain their key natural heritage feature and key hydrological feature designation. Any future proposed land use modifications will result in future planning act applications and be subject to the full public consultation process as required by the Planning Act. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cannon. Do members of council have any questions or would like to provide comment at this time? Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Mayor. My questions are pertaining to the Mapleview Parcel A lands, and those lands are, as planners probably know, that is a highly vulnerable aquifer, and so I'm looking for somebody to educate me on something in terms of the designations, in terms of going from agricultural to rural. Why not, if these are highly vulnerable aquifers and significant recharge areas, why we wouldn't designate them as environmentally protected so that we assure that no type of development will occur in this area, because these lands, this aquifer is attached to the aquifer which is on the other side of the 25th, which we currently have proposed development that's being requested there, and that's on hold right now, I understand, but I was just kind of curious why we wouldn't designate them as EP.
Mr. Cannon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Waters. The reason being is that the rural area designation went through extensive research with regard to previous uses of the property. As I mentioned previously, there's been aerial photography looked at. There's been a site walk conducted by LSRCA staff and town staff. And to this point, we haven't received any questions or concerns from LSRCA staff with regard to lands being high aquifer vulnerability.
Sorry, follow up.
I just wondered if Ms. Nordstrom wanted to add to that. She turned her camera on.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Waters' inquiry. The redesignation that's being proposed and considered and discussed here tonight in this forum is not intended to introduce any urban uses. This is strictly to establish that what's already been looked at, the existing conditions on those lands, which have been studied and determined to be rural. Any sort of different uses would have to go through and delineate and refine where those key natural heritage features are on the property, and go through a separate public planning process. But that's not what the intent of this is here tonight.
Just kind of follow up, Mayor, is that when the LRS, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, did their assessment of the parcel land on the other side of 25th, part of their concern on that property was the recharge area and the aquifer that's there, and the Lake Simcoe and the Simcoe Interactive Map Program shows that that aquifer extends to the other side as well. So my concern is making sure that we're not changing anything that will help development down the road. So that's my major concern, and I'm quite perplexed why the Conservation Authority didn't say anything about the fact that it's an aquifer and we need to be very careful with it.
Mr. Kane, did you have something to add?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Waters, and just to add a bit of background that predated Ms. Nordstrom joining the town. The LSRCA focus at the time of those site walks was looking at the natural heritage boundary and making sure that the switch from ag to rural wouldn't impact those features. I just wanted to point out to Councillor Waters that there is official plan policies in the form of overlays and protections for groundwater protection. So while the underlying designation from ag to rural will change to reflect the land characteristics from a soil and productivity point of view, the protections remain in place for those groundwater resources to be protected. And as Ms. Nordstrom mentioned, those policies in the OP specifically flag those features to be considered, much like you saw for that other property in the 25th. So, the change in the designation won't change that trigger in those existing policies that require, before any change in land use is contemplated, and certainly urbanization, that those features are fully assessed and considered as part of that application, future application.
Okay, thank you there. I just want to make sure we don't undermine our arguments down the road in terms of if development is requested on those sites.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Payne?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I have to agree with Councillor Waters on this one as well. This is, if I recall, the Redford drain goes through there as well. And there is a creek that runs through there, and it has quite a bit of water. And it's a wildlife sanctuary as well. We've got all kinds of animals that live in there, and it's, we start taking all these places down, and we allow building, and it doesn't matter whether you're changing the land name for whatever, it's going to be built on, and that we have to deter that, because the wildlife need a place to live. And if we keep building, there's nowhere else for them to go. And I know there's a lot, I've gone in there, I've walked through there, and there is a lot of animals in there, and it's just a wildlife sanctuary, and I hate to see anything happen to it. So I think just like to leave it the way it is if we can, because we have to think about our wild animals as well.
Does anybody want to comment on that? Only to say that this application is not about building anything on that land, right? This application is to bring conformity to the Simcoe County official plan. And I guess if you, like, from my perspective, rural designation is just as protective as agricultural designation, but I'm not a planner. Did anybody want to comment on Councillor Payne's comments? Ms. Nordstrom?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Payne's inquiry. Yes, and in addition to the comments that you've heard tonight, that this is not importing any development rights. These lands are regulated as well, so any permit that is applied for would need to be reviewed by the conservation authorities. So the intent is very much to reflect what the existing conditions are today for that portion of the lands being of rural character.
Councillor Arsati.
Thank you, Worship. Ms. Nordstrom may have, led into the answer for one of my questions. On the parcel B, when we look at the lands that are on the 9th line with the changes. So a couple questions. Can you build on key natural heritage land?
Ms. Nordstrom or Mr. Cannon? Sorry, I just kind of passed over you. Sorry, my fault.
For you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Arsati, it very much depends on the existing zoning of the property to whether or not they could build an agricultural operation in line with the existing zoning. But as far as development on these lands in terms of what we've seen throughout Alcona, that's certainly not something that we could entertain because it would have to go through the full planning process. It needs a county, it needs to go through the planning public process to be able to accommodate any future development. And the existing zoning, I'm afraid I'm not aware exactly what it is, but likely it would permit a single detached dwelling and accessory uses and agricultural uses and farm related uses on the property.
So on the Schedule B for the, I think it's Pratt lands that are on the 9th and the 20th, when you look at this, you're looking at the redesignation agricultural to designated rural. You've identified lands in showing on ours in like a burgundy color to remain rural. So those could be, I'm just trying to understand, the redesignation and what this quadrant looks like. Does that, I'm not clear, does that allow future development on that rural land?
Madam Mayor, to Councillor Arsati, essentially the red and the orange on that particular plan, they don't allow development. It depends on the existing zoning bylaw. These lands are outside of the Alcona urban settlement boundary. So any future land use designation change to bring it into the Alcona urban boundary will be subject to the full public planning process.
So then the, just to follow up then, the almost like the geographical change is from that settlement area that's developed there to this area, this quadrant changing. It's quite a large piece of land there. Okay, that's just my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Waters.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick question referring back to what I'd asked earlier about the Maple View. Could we not designate those areas as, because they have such a high hydrological significance, is there no reason why we wouldn't just designate them EP and then take that a whole future question of, development opportunities out of the, I understand natural heritage does have significant layers that protect it, but why wouldn't we just protect it right now and say it's EP because of its hydrological features that are in that area?
Well, since we're just receiving this tonight, this is just a public planning meeting. So maybe we can leave that with staff and they can come back with their report and that can be responded to in that. Does that suit you, Councillor Waters?
That's fine.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right, so now I go to the public and we'll now hear from those members of the public who have questions regarding the proposed amendment before council receives the presentation reports and all the comments provided during this meeting. The speaking order is now on the screen. Now, I don't believe we have, oh, we do. We have one speaker. The speaking order is now on the screen. When it is your turn, you will have 5 minutes to express your questions and concerns, and town staff will be capturing your comments as we progress. And then I guess you can just go on for your other 5 minutes since there's only one speaker. Once all speakers have had their first, I can just skip over that. Okay. So whenever you turn your video on and you can speak, and then we'll go from there. So Mr. Evers. Hello and welcome. You're on mute now, so you might want to just take yourself off mute.
How's that?
That's great. We can hear you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Michael Evers. My wife, Darlene, and I own 7.85 acres to the north and to the east of Parcel A on Mapleview Drive. We have no objection to the proposed change, although we mostly wanted to understand how the process works, and I've learned a great deal this evening by being on this Zoom platform. Who knew that COVID-19 would bring us to this point? But so certainly we really didn't understand the whole process. I understand it better now. And so I will turn it back to Madam Mayor and Council, and I appreciate being able to comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Evers, and thanks for sticking with us through the first public meeting, and I appreciate you being here very much. And if things do come to mind at another time, please feel free to send your comments or questions to the clerk's office, or call the clerk's office, and your questions and comments will be addressed in the public meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll ask now, have there been any emails received by the clerk's office during this meeting?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, we actually did get one email from Gary Bell on behalf of Sylvan and Paul Bruno, residents on the 9th line, or owners on the 9th line, advising that they're supportive of the OPA for redesignation. And that's it for emails.
Thank you. And Madam Deputy Clerk, did we receive any phone calls during the meeting?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we have not received any calls regarding this item this evening.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who have taken the time to provide input regarding the proposed amendment. We will now go to the recommendation, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and then ask council if they have any further comments or questions. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Fowler and Councillor Nicol. Any further comments or questions before we send this back to staff to consider everything we had to say tonight? Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. I did have my hand up earlier, but you missed it. So just to, with Councillor Waters, I concur with him that about 8 years ago, Drysdale Tree Farms did try to purchase this land. And at that time, they wanted to actually level the forest there to start growing a Christmas tree farm. Council of the day vetoed that one fairly fast. And I think that's the only thing I'm concerned about in the future going to rural agriculture, is that one of these companies could then approach that area again and basically take down everything that's there to start growing Christmas trees. So I just want you to be aware of it. We were approached prior, and I'm just watching from the background, okay? Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Anyone else? All in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed to the recommendation? That's 2 opposed, and that's carried. All right, so that's the end of our public meeting for tonight. Oh, sorry, I just had a bit of a preamble to, if you have not made oral or written submissions in regards to this proposal before a decision is reached, you should be aware that the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss your appeal. Anyone who wishes to provide comment may still do so and may also register as an interested party to be contacted before this application is further considered by council. Please contact the clerk's office at innisfil.ca. Council thanks everyone for their participation. Now we'll move on to our last item on the council agenda tonight, and that would be item 4.7. This does not require public consultation, but it does require council's consideration. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to get the recommendation on the floor. Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Orsatti. Questions or comments on the Class 1 variation application? Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I was on the right one. Sorry. This is the boathouse application for increased height on Shoreview Drive. Questions or comments on this item? Councillor Nicol and then the Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, I see through the staff report that all the criteria has been met with this application, so I don't have a concern with that. I just have a question. I think I already know the answer, but with the design of the boathouse that's shown in the report, an amazing patio and storage above the actual boat slips. I'm just curious, how often does Bylaw or staff reinspect these to ensure that they're not turning into bunkies?
Who'd like to answer that question? I don't think we have Bylaw on here tonight, do we? Mr. Kane?
Through your worship to Councillor Nicol, yeah, this has traditionally been an issue, and we have stepped up our inspections and are working through a couple of other files right now exactly for this issue. So it's something we are aware of. Enforcement and building and LSRCA, for that matter, are looking at ways to discourage that conversion from happening. With things like reduced ceiling heights and further limiting servicing connections. So we are very aware of this issue, and we'll be proactive in ensuring that this doesn't indeed turn into a habitable living space.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. This concurs with Councillor Nichols. As you know, in the Big Bay Point area, we've had several boathouses built that actually now have $300,000 kitchens in them for an art studio. So I think the LSRCA needs to be a little bit more aggressive in this area when it comes to what they do a year later down the road, because there certainly is a abuse of the boathouse issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Thank you, Worship, and through to Deputy Mayor Davidson and in the previous question, that's one big benefit of the community planning permit system that we have, is that we have the ability, fines are built into that bylaw. So if a use is clearly not being a use for which the permit is issued, it makes the enforcement side of this much easier than what it has been in the past through a much more prolonged zoning and site plan process. So we have that tool at our disposal, and given the prevalency of this and past practices, we are not looking forward to using it, but certainly willing to use it to discourage those thinking about it.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
I concur with what Councillor Nicol and Deputy Mayor Dan Davis have expressed concern over is I don't even know why we allow a second floor, because it just opens the opportunity to allow this to happen. These are multi-million-dollar properties, and the owners can afford to pay the fines down the road. So I'm not too sure why we even entertain this. We have allowed a couple of boathouses go in, which didn't have second floors, which were acceptable to council. So I'm not too sure why we even allow this. And so I guess I'll ask our planning director, why don't we just limit the boathouses to a single floor with maybe a minimum amount of space up above for storage. But this one here obviously has a cathedral ceiling and everything else. This is going to be something. This is going to be something more than just storage area. You don't go to that extent to build storage.
Mr. Scarrett.
Through you, Your Worship, to address Councillor Waters' question about the second story. This situation is a little bit unique in the fact that there is an existing 2-story boathouse on this property. It is dilapidated and is falling down into the lake. The new proposal is in the exact location, if not better. It is actually farther away from the property line than the existing boathouse, which is allowing staff and the developer to entertain additional vegetation to renaturalize the shoreline and produce a better situation that's happening now. Yes, the proposal is slightly taller than the existing boathouse that is dilapidated. However, under the shoreline bylaw, they have those permissions to rebuild on these lands and have the second story. LSRCA, or the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority, did change their regulations on early June of this year to limit boathouses to a single story. This boathouse that is proposed majority of it is within the existing slope bank, which is a substantial bank that is limiting the height of the first floor where the boat storage is. And as Mr. Kane did mention, we do have provisions in the shoreline bylaw to enforce and protect the natural shoreline with uses in that boathouse. All violations are through our bylaw enforcement office, and we work in coordination with the LSRCA on those violations.
Thank you. Councillor Sadi.
Thank you. I agree. It's, you know, quite elaborate for a boathouse. But when you look at all the specs, the length, the width, the floor did not change. It actually is lower than what the town bylaw allows. It's the height that is increased. It's replacing an existing boathouse. It is very attractive. My question is that, so they have to be designed as storage and not livable, clear things up, no kitchen, no water, no washrooms, etc. But can you use it for entertaining? So you don't have any of those things. I mean, it's you know, the windows and the doors and everything else makes me think if I was at this cottage or whatever, that maybe there's a party out on this. So it is storage, but can it be used for entertaining without all those other things that are not allowed in the permit?
Mr. Scarrett.
Bylaw.
Through your worship, to address Councillor Sadi's question. Great question. Yes, it can be used for entertaining purposes or storage. It just can't be used as a dwelling unit, which is in the shoreline bylaw is in line with the LSPP. We work closely with LSRCA to ensure that no services that would promote a dwelling unit or sleeping cabin to be permitted in these water structures. This boathouse is fully on land, and yes, you are correct that it is slightly over the height restriction. The height restriction is about 4 meters. I think they're proposing slightly over 5, and they're allowed to go to 7, subject to council's approval. But to help mediate that request, staff are requesting additional plantings to help screen and renaturalize that shoreline.
Mm-hmm. So, and just a follow-up for me is that with the additional vegetation and no impact to fish habitat, I think that's the most important thing over the height of replacing an existing building that already has second story.
Thank you, Councillor Sadi. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Fowler?
There's been some comments made that just maybe question. They say that this space is not meant for habitable use, which is fully understandable. Now, considering that hypothetically we allow this variation application to go through, and the owner alters it to make it a habitable space, they make the bare minimum just so that it crosses the line. what is the maximum penalty we can issue in this sort of scenario? Because what I'm hearing is, well, these people are well off, they're super rich, so they don't care, they can pay the problem, make it go away. So if someone's going to be able to afford the fines and not change their behaviors, what options do we as a town have in regards to this? Like when it comes down to what is the maximum fine or penalty that we can impose on somebody who oversteps the boundaries that we're going into in good faith?
Is that a fair question for you, Mr. Scarrett?
Through your worship, yes, it is a fair question. We haven't had the experience through the court system on violations on the shoreline yet, but quote me if I'm wrong, in the Planning Act, we can go up to $25,000 plus the LSRCA has the capability of producing fines under their Conservation Authorities Act, and we would be working with them to justify that. The ultimate goal is compliance. So should there be a violation investigated and confirmed, we'd be working with that landowner to rectify that situation so that it gains compliance. Our ultimate goal is to gain compliance and limit those uses that abut the shoreline.
Councilor Fowler, a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Now, is this the complaint-based system that's put in place, such as Bylaw has, or are our town staff able to go and investigate if they, for example, they're out and about and they see something that looks a little odd? Are they able to go to the property, or does a complaint actually have to be put into place to create a file to investigate this scenario? I just want to see what we're working with in that regard, please. Thank you.
Mr. Scarrett.
Through you, Your Worship, to address Councillor Fowler's question. Yes, we work through the Planning Department works in tandem with our Bylaw Enforcement Department to ensure compliance and any fines that we need to address. And it is through a complaint-basis system as well as coordination with LSRCA's regulatory department.
Mr. Kane?
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Sadi, for letting me add just to Nick's answer there. We also, building has also been instrumental as well when they're doing those inspections, particularly near the end and for occupancy, when they see those suspicious modifications or things that, don't reflect storage, certainly that's communicated internally. So, we do with our cross-functional teams look for that actively and don't strictly rely on a complaint-based system. The other piece as well is that further to Mr. Scarce's answer about maximum fines, the CPPS does actually allow us to issue daily fines as well. So yes, they may be smaller, but if push comes to shove and those fines are being handed out on a daily basis, we have the ability to do that. And although we don't know what those amounts are at the moment, we can certainly follow up with council if required and clarify that further.
Thank you, Mr. King. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you for the latitude, Your Worship. I noticed that in the recommendation, the one thing I missed was recommendation number 3, that the owners provide a community benefit contribution at the rate of 1% of the total construction cost of the new boathouse and the marine railways, dock, and all other works associated with the application. Because this is all new to us with the community benefit, is that those types of community benefits will be applied to any of these types of applications coming before council?
Mr. Scarrett?
No, because this is a new one for us. I'm just trying to understand the process. Not that I don't disagree with it.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Orsatti, yes, the 1% community benefits section out of the shoreline bylaw is applied when necessary. This is our actual 3rd one for boathouses. We had one on Ladywood Way that had to contribute to this program. And the last one that we saw earlier this year in the spring, which was approved by council, was on Fairway, and it was an in-water boathouse. That was actually our first one that was actually that was presented to council. I know it's been a long and busy summer, but that was also the same condition that you're seeing before you today.
Thank you, Mr. Scarrett. Any other questions? Councillor Payne?
Thank you, Your Worship. We just have a question for, I guess, Mr. Scarrett. Who checks the locations, like the boathouses, and how often are they inspected? Because I know for a fact that some of these boathouses are rented, because before I came on council, I knew a gentleman who rented an apartment in a boathouse right on the water on Lake Simcoe. And if there's one, there's more. And if they're allowed to build the additions, you know that they're going to be renting some of these out. So my question is, how often are these checked to make sure that they are not renting them?
Mr. Scarrett?
Through your worship to Councillor Payne. Great question. One of the unique features of the shoreline bylaw is that we can establish timelines for different forms of development. So as you can see in the recommendation, section 2.3 talks about the submitted planting plan has to be applied within 1 year. So in the shoreline bylaw, we do have checks and balances along the way, as well as the building department has checks and balances during construction. So to ensure compliance with the shoreline bylaw. And then if there is a suspected violation, that we would investigate through our bylaw enforcement team and look for compliance.
Go ahead, Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I just want to add, so you're doing the inspections as they're building it. So once it's all built and everything is fine, and then they go on their merry way, then you don't go back, right? It's just, you take it that it is just a boathouse. So that's my question is, after the fact, when it's already there and done, and everything is gone past maybe the next year or whatever, then they rent it out. That's my concern, as to we let it go and nobody checks it. So that was my question. Is there any sort of a system where staff do go and do checks periodically to these different boathouses? That was just my question. I just want to make sure that they're being checked. That's all.
If I could afford to live in a beautiful place like that, I don't think I would worry too much about getting some rent from a boathouse. But I understand your point. It could be, made into a suite for, company or something. I see Mr. Rayner's turned his screen on.
Thanks, Your Worship, members of council. Just to Councillor Payne's point, we do have a complaint-driven system around enforcement. So unfortunately, we don't have the resources to continue to return to places that might decide to violate the rules of the game. But the budget deliberations are coming up, and we're hearing you, and perhaps there will be a suggestion that more bylaw staff are required in order to be able to do this. But just to the benefit of the owners that are making the application before you, I think we do give the benefit of the doubt, which is that people will comply with the rules. There's no indication, as far as I'm aware on this file in particular, of any past behavior that might suggest otherwise. So while there are other cases that are challenging for sure, and council has felt the brunt of that, I just want to be clear with this owner who's probably watching this, that we don't have any ill will towards this particular owner. We're just concerned from a systemic level, and I think that enforcement issue is one that we should be probably best discussing during the budget deliberations. Because it is a resourcing question. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Councillor Arsadi.
I would, think that because they currently have a two-story boathouse, if it hasn't been a facility that's had rental and that's not something in the future that they would be doing. It's sort of, if they haven't done it now, they're not gonna, I don't see them doing that in the future, but good question on other boathouses.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the things is like, the process isn't like it used to be now with our shores. It's a long process and it's an expensive process. And people have spent a lot of money to get this plan in place and finally get to this point. First of all, I don't think if they're going to build a boathouse such as this, it's going to be rented out. They need the storage, they use it for storage. The other thing is, if we say no to something like this, there's an appeal period. Like they can appeal this. And they appeal, they'll likely win it. And when they win it, we're going to have to defend it. And it's going to cost us a lot of money. And we have less control then than we have now, because now the process is in place. We're going to have the building department looking after it. We're going to have bylaws looking after it. We're going to, you know, we're in control. But if it's appealed because we turn it down, we're not control anymore. So think about what you're doing here.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel. Any other questions, comments? I have one, if I could, Mr. Scarrett, and it's in regards to the way that we advertise. It says that I can't read my screen anymore. I minimized it. I can't get it open. Notice the application was provided to all agencies, and it talks about putting a sign on both sides of the property. What I didn't see was the 120-meter circulation. Does this apply? Does the Planning Act 120-meter circulation apply to our community permitting process?
Through your worship, that's a great question. As the community planning permit system, or the shoreline bylaw, like we like to call it, is different than any of the other Planning Act applications that you're traditionally seeing. It only requires signage on the property at the roadside and the lakeside. There's no circulation with respect to abutting properties like a zoning bylaw amendment, like you heard earlier tonight, or a plan of subdivision or an official plan amendment. That is one of the biggest differences with the community planning permit system, as well as we provide detailed information on the town's website should anyone see those signs, and we direct them to the website to obtain additional information or contact staff for that additional information. And that is legislated. It is also legislated that the public can comment on shoreline applications, and the owner or applicant has the right to appeal.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for that. All right, good discussion. Anyone else? Because I think we're going to have a few more of these in the next few weeks. So good discussion. And actually, for the first time tonight, we're going to be having a vote on making a decision versus sending something back to staff for to report back. So the motion is very long, so I won't ask it to be read, but it's on the screen, and it's been duly moved and seconded, so I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation? 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and all those opposed? 1 opposed. So that is carried. Thank you very much. All right, next is our confirming bylaw. And I need a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw, please, to confirm tonight's proceedings. Councillor Sadi and Councillor Ices. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. And adjournment. So move for adjournment would be Councillor Nicol and Councillor Fowler. And I just wanted to, before we call the vote on that, wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you get some downtime and have something to be thankful for, even during these very crazy times. And to all of staff, I wish you also a few hours off your screen. You've been pulling double duty lately, so enjoy your family over this very special time. So all in favor of adjournment, and that is carried. And thank you, those who are watching on YouTube channel tonight, and those who were with us throughout the evening on screen. So thank you so much. And we will convene again, hopefully not until next Wednesday, which is our regular council meeting. So thanks, everybody. Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.